Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. It is currently 6:02 on the 4th of December. Yes, we need to approve the agenda. Is there an amendment to the agenda?
School district.
You- Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Were we gonna have somebody here that was gonna explain the surplus that's not real? Okay. Or whatever. Where is that on the? Okay. Okay.
What items do we have under old business? All right, then we can move on to new business. And we'll move on to the Alton School. Welcome. Tim Broderick.
The brief overview, we have a student fit. Explains the Alton Festival on 77 and the Prospect Mountain High School one are not actually two numbers that get added together. The Prospect Mountain High School operating under a maintenance agreement with Barnes. So the Alton school budget, the first one, you have to be looking at one line that contains seven. You pay Alton's share of a cost in the Alton school budget. If you're not confused yet, you will be, but I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. The very first piece of paper in the packet is a memo from provide an overview of the proposed school budget. The total increase year to year, all school spending for all is $330,364. That's a 1.86% increase from the first fiscal year to the operating. This is one of the reasons I informally predicted somebody to go there. We may be able to spell it because I'm familiar with what I was generally looking for, and I'm proud of the work our staff has done. Not because we're smarter than everyone else, but we had a fortunate series of events whereby our enrollment continues to decline as the average age of the Alton, New Hampshire population increases, fewer children, fewer schools. It means that we're able to, when there are reasonable opportunities, we can do so. I think we should get a little credit for taking that responsibility seriously and paying attention to it and doing it. But at the same time, being a grown student, she wouldn't be in this position financially.
What is the percentage of change of from last year to this year offhand? Okay, is it in here? I'm just. Okay.
Now, and that is a decrease of
8. Okay.
That's what we're.
Okay. Yeah.
Here, don't see what that long, but. And very clear. I think about the element, the K2 here, I think of it as 400. You know, that the little bit under that, this fall, we'll
You said this 385?
be.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, we started here. Yeah,
And what's the capacity?
800 or?
oh, it's nice.
Oh.
Okay.
So the 385 is the K through 8? Oh, okay.
And- Something in the business city. That they're reporting to every. I don't think we will see 450 to 500 students central school in the next 5 years. Or that.
What's the capacity of Alton Central School?
Yeah, I don't.
About,
Mostly, I can tell you, how many we could have put in there. I think if every class worth capacity, we could fit 500 kids in there, we wouldn't have a big issue. The capacity that I tend to focus on, and if you've been here with me before, we've talked about this before, is the capacity of the high school. And the work we've been trying to do to have there, which I'm happy to get into. Get there.
I would say the elementary school is pretty close, so I mean, yeah, comfortably.
Yeah.
It's not like we could have 600 in that building, that would be incredibly feasible, so I would say we're pretty close to.
Yeah, 50 kids make a big difference, especially when you're dividing per pupil costs, right? We have a higher than state average per pupil cost here. And one of the reasons is in a small school, 10 students in that simple division formula make a big difference. You lose 10 kids. If you want to look at, I'll finish the overview, then we'll so the overall increase is just under 2%. We've managed, the rate of inflation now 4 years running. That doesn't mean that they've all been very low since we called out here 2027, 42, about 80%. But the rate of inflation in those is pretty good too. I think the federal inflation rate this year looks like it's going to be about 2.9. It's there are a few notes here for lines in the Alton School, the Central School budget that shows some changes. We'll look at it line by line, which we can do to see some increases in software, but that's mostly about all. I like function for technology, so that our technology director and staff are actually controlling all of our software purchases. We have not eliminated it, but if we experience retirements or resignations or other parameters, we're going to look closely at whether or not those fill this spring simply because part of it. Now we have 3 5th grader teachers and a 5th grader teachers. We will need because the enrollment need is spread around the school, it's not close grade level, but that might mean we can take a shift. And those are we have to respond to those kinds of conditions. I've maintained this in the spring, but it is certainly not a ton in the budget that we would simply, we'll just fill out a position. We're going to consider the circumstances and do what is best for school, students, as well as the total amount in this budget for special education is down overall, but our out of the experience significantly. You might have heard recently, Concord in for federal ed is going to be less next year. That will affect us. What happens is when we have students whose needs are at a high enough level that they can't be met here at the local school, placed out of district, federal law. We are. That includes the cost of an output replacement and the cost of transportation. In the last few years, this has been a unique experience. For me, when I started my career, the cost of specialized education on this considerable $75,000 a year for 8 students. It's not unloved. The cost of transportation years ago would have been maybe half that. Now, in some cases, the cost of transportation has begun to exceed the cost of the program. It is incredibly to find special education to transportation. So if anyone's looking for a new business side, a strong requirement. So, and above a threshold, what's called $50,000, you are eligible to apply for state aid for those special education. So every district in the state calculates how many students they have, the total cost of them at $50,000. Then we submit a report to the state at the end of the year, and it was this many students, it was this much money, and we are eligible to be able to reimburse all of that. But the legislature, acting on a proposal by the Commissioner of Education, they don't make up the number, they pass a budget that funds a finite amount for special education aid. It's not as much as the total that's requested by district. So whatever the difference is, they just do simple math here, and if the amount in the budget is, let's say, 75% of the amount that has been requested by districts, we all get 75%. Special education aid in the state budget has been level funded now. Our costs are all in state, and some of them at
We'll need to speak with the legislators about them.
We talked to Frank too, right? It'll blue.
So that's what the news.
So does each school district make up that difference? Yeah.
This is basically federally mandated local bill. When family moves into town, for example, and this is just an example, but these things do happen. They happen. They somehow manage to happen every year. If a family moves into town with a child who has been already placed at an out-of-district special education school by another, they become our financial responsibility as of the day. Even for our budget and total appropriation, we're already approved. That does happen. So we actually have a special education trust fund and $1,000. And the school board can access those funds when it's necessary. We have those kind of experience. One of the 2 warrant articles that the Alton School Board is recommending for this March's warrant is an article to raise and appropriate $150,000. Because we know there's more practice. Special education.
What is, how many special ed students do you have, and is that number growing?
We, it's about 7. Yeah, give or take, if we're always entering in activity. The year, but on a percentage basis, pretty consistent.
Would have 385,
Vary as well. I mean,
And those need, those are mild, mild and moderate learning disabilities, and those kids needs to be met within the classroom by regular education teachers with minimal services. So no, all within the operating budget, none of the others. These additional costs of our ICE students, 8 or 10 students.
but it's 70 out of 385, 400 kids. But some of those, yeah, are minor, and does that mean that they might have, an EIP or,
So we run- There's a whole process in which the public school is required to convene a team to write an IEP, an individual educational plan. And the team, which includes parent as well as educators, have to agree on the interventions that are required, that are likely to happen. But that majority can be met. Setting, there are some students who are in regular ed setting 90% of the time, and then maybe 3 times a week, we'll get a half an hour when they're pulled out and they get support of instruction or group instruction and 3 kids with a vector. That's what most special education, and those are great for what we if you look at the line by line budget, you'll see it organized by function. So there, the first function in the school budget is the so it says school in 7 at the top, and then on page 1. There it is. So this is the 1100s function, is regular education. So these are classroom teachers, all of their salaries and benefits, supplies to the regular ed classrooms. As in turn of pages, you'll get to the 12, and if you look at something by the way left, you will see 1.01 and then 11. That's 1100. As you turn the pages, you'll see the 1200. At the bottom of each function, but is the total amount. But so the total amount budgeted in regular education at Alton Central School next year is on page. No, sorry, the 1100. The total amount, but the total amount in regular education is on page 8. And it's about 230. Function for regular education 1100. I'm not going to do this with every function in the budget. I'm showing you how to do it. That's all. The first column, the total number is 8,762,512. I'm on page 8. You actually can't see the 8. And that's the actual amount that was spent in the 1100s function in 22-23. Then the next number is the actual amount spent in 23-24, which is 8,795,000. Then the budget that was adopted for this year, which had 9,572,679. And then the budget that's proposed here for next year, which is up 186,566 from current year for a payment of 715,923. So if you're wanting to read this budget, this format, admittedly pretty. That's how you decipher what's happening. So after the 1100s function, regular education, we actually have the 1140s first, which is technology, then the 1200s, which is special education and encouragement from there. I'm going to back up just behind the blue sheets. This is a the 1 page of the whole budget. So there's the 1100, that's on at the top, and then 1140 technology, 1200 special education. So now you have a 1 page summary. You can see at the bottom right the total 1.86% increase, and also now they have an idea of the lines that you're.
There was no occupational therapist and there's proposed to have an occupational, what does an occupational therapist do in a school setting?
He provides both special education, these services, five more plans.
Physical.
Facilities. And under those plans, we will self-prescribe services, you know, if you don't have enough demand for that to wait full time, you can contract those services then. There's actually been an OT at Alton Central School for many, many years. But we didn't have a separate function, the school didn't have a separate function for occupational therapy. She was left included in one of the other functions. And one of the things our business administrator Heidi and I have been trying to do is to standardize budgets, because we have these that are so elementary, we have to involved. So we're trying to make the functions map the organization. We're trying to make it logical.
Is
So
this,
we created an OT fund, not spent, you know, money.
If I can, I'm struggling a little bit. We have the total on page 8 for regular education, 1,100. With a total of 97,59, 245 for the proposed budget. Yeah, and it doesn't seem to align with that 47.77%.
Unfortunately, I spent half my week. With tuition to the school,
Oh,
it line above the.
yeah.
So it becomes to then education, regular education, entry in the Alton. So the 87,59,245 minus the high school number probably yields exactly the.
Clear as mud.
So just to wrap up my summary, now that it's terrible. On the second page of my memo, there are four. And then in school, which is variable not only based on the high school budget, but based on the number of students enrolled in high school from Alton, and the number of students enrolled at Mountain from Barnstable. Because the towns divide the operating costs of the high school in proportion to enrollments. So in a year when 400 students are in the class, and 200 live in Alton and 200 in Barnstable, and that's not the cost they do. And that will show up in that what's that. Last year, and you see this. Last year, Alton had 205 students in high school, and Barnstable had 102. So Alton was responsible for 51.6%. This year, Alton has 182 students enrolled in high school, and Barnstable has 199. So Alton will be responsible for that. Even with considerable increases in budget, that's going to yield a reduction in the amount Alton has to pay the profit on high school. That reduction is going to be almost a level funding in the high school. That's driven by this shift. But even better news, but not your problem, but I get to go starting January. In Barnstable, additional town meeting schedule is I get to talk about a $725,000 increase. Just get the assessment to the high school. Before we start to talk about increases.
7.
Say a prayer for you.
Yeah, better you than me.
So I think that's, like summary on the. I know it's complicated, I am, you know, I go through what we're talking about. It's been, I think, one of the, only funding that, but. I like to help build on it. So if it's helpful. It's stay important. But the school board, two recommended
Mhm.
that we allow committee recommendation on. One is to raise an appropriate $120,000 to be funded. Maintenance fund, which is going to fund a planned boiler replacement in about 2 years. And if you look at the last year, exact same thing. 5-year period. Refund. Here, we believe we will meet anticipated costs.
Did that pass last year?
It did.
Didn't we replace boilers in the,
It did 5 boilers.
because I remember this has been in here since the 90s.
Really. I think that yearly now, we're going to review that. And we will have 3 or 4 boiler rooms when we're done, because we're also.
So how many more years of 120 do you need to replace?
Yeah. This. And. 2 more, 2 more.
Well,
You need to, I need to discuss the committee. We're friends. And saving. I'm not gonna. It's an old building. The building here was building. But Alton has done a pretty good job taking care of it. Someday. I will return Alton and volunteer. To help the new school building. But it's not.
We'll hold you to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can we get that in writing?
It'll be in the minute.
Love building. We are building a school in Marquette, and I'm happy, I know, I like talking about this because. They've needed it for 30 years. I feel like it's. Next year, the building. The voters. The parts. But you're half the money. So it's a lot of money and it's difficult for the taxpayer. But it's really like that. So,
That building was in bad shape or is in bad shape.
my first tour of that building, I thought I was. Have you ever been?
What's that?
I did.
I have not, no. No.
It's a. The second that I already mentioned. School board is. Is the reason. I know it's a being.
About how much do you spend each year in the special education trust fund? Nibble.
So for Alton Central School. We spend just under $3 million. On special. And that's just in the 1,200 function, which is student services. There's also special education implementation, which is function 2,722. which is another $350,000. So it's over $3 million a year of the school budget. In special education costs. There's also a 1,200 something at the high school. So some of the high school assessment is special education costs also. So against a 17 and a quarter, 17 and a half million dollar budget, we're probably, I would ballpark 3.5 to 3,750 in special education. 3,500,000, 3 million.
And how much of the expendable trust fund do you have to tap?
So we've withdrawn in my time here, the board has withdrawn from the expendable trust. Only one. But it was for the last. And it's listen to that, so the amount going in makes up for that, plus it's different. Considering actually, I think I included the exact breakdown.
It's 280. How much do you like to keep? How much do you like to keep in there?
We that achievement, right? Or if we do it.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a question. Maybe my math is off, but I'm looking at, not that we have to worry about Barnstead, but it looks like, what's the cost per student? Is that,
26,294.
Page is that on?
Yeah. State non. Is a problem here. And that because. People have. In. Never. Out of district placements.
okay,
Costs. Or any capital costs that would be. On. That. So we would back out those the numbers. The state average last year was about 20,300. You're high. Said that. We're closer. And I think that when it phased out and the numbers that come from the state at the beginning of January, in fact, when I came here back, it was during January, right? They had just released the numbers and I reported on the series. But we don't have. But we're high instead.
How does Alton score? As far as what the kids got upstairs?
We are around and we report numbers to the school board at its monthly meetings. In fact, our annual data comes out. Yes. So we have a new SAS test. Spring we get the numbers back in fall. Then it's not as good as it should be.
Right, so,
Particularly in that.
so I'm sorry. So we're about in the middle for scoring, and we're about, and our cost per student is about 20% more than state average.
The last year with the real. Because when I came. Above. And one my goal.
That's your review or your area. But what is probably a school board question, what is the school board doing to address that issue? Because,
Yeah, but the school board on committee.
right, well, you work for
And
them,
they-
right? Okay.
So it has been. Depending on the level of engagement with what we do, school system here, you might have heard that it didn't used to be that one superintendent be sitting here talking about the high school and all. that's new over the last 4 years. But, and one of the reasons for that was to, right, so we could afford now to pay attention to we instead of having 3 different super, all in cards that when I came here.
Hmm.
found-
That was a thorn on the side back in the nineties.
We have an assistant. He is entirely responsible for curriculum instruction, assessment, processes. So what we do now, our staff work 180 up to 180 days with student, and they have 5 professional days. On those professional days, what they do now is they meet together and work on curriculum instruction. We have an assessment start that all of our students take. It's not the high stakes end of the year state entry test. It's a much shorter test, take about 50 minutes. They do it 3 times a year, and it allows us to grow by student, by classroom, by grade, by school, so we can look at all 3rd graders, aren't that all 3rd graders, and all because of the and we can see over the course of the year how in September, the midwinter, and spring, each of those students or those students has improved in reading, in writing, in basic subjects. So that's how we're thinking of where we are and how things. What we're doing curriculum is on those days we have our staff working together backwards from the state standard for filming. So our science teacher, we don't hire a science teacher and say, decide what to teach. We hire a science teacher and say, you're a chemistry teacher. And the state chemistry standards have been, but a couple of years ago, our teachers started looking from those standards backwards to set objectives for each class. And this year, they're now looking at scope and sequence documents, how they come out and plan instruction here. The next step back from sequence is lesson planning and collaborating to make sure that if it's the 4-week full, a 5th grade class in Mrs. Jones' room in Alton, or Mrs. Stevens' room in Alton, or Mrs. Bergeron's room in Barnstead, they shouldn't be doing roughly the same thing because that's the 5th grade. None of this existed. I'm not trying to talk around your question, but I do understand that when someone like me answers a question like that, that's where it can sound. Unfortunately, this is the painstaking, time-consuming long-term work it takes to create a high-functioning school system where teachers and kids are all accountable together for learning. Otherwise, there are too many barriers. There's too much randomness, and you never know what's true if you don't have some basic agreements about this is what we teach, this is when we teach it, and this is how we measure student achievement. So we have built those mechanisms, and I think it's another year to finish. And because we report this data dashboard annually, and we're constantly updating it, teachers know, the board know, we're paying attention. I've worked in a system where we had this kind of consistency before. And because we all knew what was being measured, there was actually a sense of confidence. And we knew that if I could work with my students to achieve specific results, it would show up in the data and I would be recognized as having been successful. I think in any enterprise, that those are the kind of systems you build, so employees know what value. So that's what we're.
So this is, what year is this?
So this is 6th year. My first, I would only, my 2nd year, we added arts. 3rd, we added in for that work year at all.
But what year are we in? Getting everybody, I guess, all the schools on the same page or both, and
It-
so have there been any improvements in the past couple, 3 years?
Yeah. In the area where. That's been a challenge, and I'm involved. Not achieved has been. Overcome. In public school in general. Behavior. And I'm talking about Americans. Over the last few years, students are exhibiting conducts that educators have never. And I'm talking about some things is acronyms that it would have been inconceivable. 60, 70. Some of them that this is related to the what happens with the law is if a student continues to exhibit some of these extreme negative behaviors and is very disruptive to the school for other students, that ends up being diagnosed as a disability, and the student becomes entitled.
And I'm sure, I can probably say with certainty that I'm sure some of this is parents not should do with their kids when they act up or when they, I mean, I had a friend years ago, a friend of my son's who was a public school teacher, and she had to get out because she said, these kids are saying things, I think it was in 2nd grade. He said, I can't do anything. I can't even throw them out of class. And I said, you can't? She said, no, they have to stay in the class. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
And even in internal in-school suspension, there are federal limits. State have all stopped what is required. State, we cannot print and one and a year. And then the DOD involved with anytime the student's out of the classroom counts towards this total of. Once the principal has suspended the same student for 10 days in a school year, then in New Hampshire, only the superintendent can suspend for up to an additional. After those, our only choice is in its fault when you're in the school or an alternative center. If we go to its fault and hearing for the school and the school board expels, parents have an avenue of appeal. And if the student is diagnosed with a disability, the discipline law is alternate. And so the placements comes. This. I'm not complaining about this. These are the facts of our lives and the conditions. It is extremely challenging. And I've heard what they said about parenting, and I would.
What's my opinion?
I would observe, and I'll give you an opinion. We've done something about this in these. That when I started my career as a high school student, and by 2010, all of my students sound diploma. And as of this year, our students might own them, but they're not using them. And that's, I didn't get quite as draconian a rule as I was advocating for from the school board, but we got enough. And it is.
It's working.
Because
Discipline referral in all central school and Crawford. Now, we're mad.
what does the student, is he or she required to leave the phone at home or in the office or just
So-
not?
As- But our one policy, I can watch it. Hear me, the follow. The teacher be pretty observant if it has worked. It has actually gotten work. And interesting things happen. The kids have started to figure out that these are like, that they're suicide rate, anxiety, that thing, all. Different one. They have figured it out. As much as they might feel better to these things. So we met with group. And they were remarkably. Wow. You know. Reasonable, but they wanted to talk in a good. But sure, we pull out phones to be used as. Study. Or in study hall. And our study hall teacher didn't used to have. Now our study hall teacher. Not with his grades. If I'm wondering, I have lost their this. So I can chat how we're going to be in their classes during the time of study. And if they're caught up, they can use their phones during just that. And it's working. I actually was advocating for a white ban. But our kids have done well. It's going pretty good. And I think it's helped our new principal and the kids form nice with the teacher, sense of community. At the high school, in the middle school, we should understand. There's never more than we've done. And we outlined aggressive set of consequences for that. The first time a teacher sees a phone for this, the second time. Fourth time. But it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and Greg, if I could go back to what you were talking about with like the testing and scoring and everything, it's really, as a parent, I've seen it trickle down to the student level this year a lot. You know, we have data points we're collecting from these these tests, and now we have a pretty good idea of like how things are tracking. But this year for my middle schooler, like there's focus on like outside of the core blocks, like science, social studies, math, English, like outside of those blocks, there is focused time to helping making it an individual learning opportunity for the kids. So the teachers are able to pull that data now off the STAR testing, the standardized testing, and see, okay, this child needs this kind of help with math or English, and it's actually being implemented this year where it may not have been so hard focused. So this is going to be interesting this year to see hopefully the trend start to change a bit and seeing the improvements where, hey, these kids are getting the help that they need specifically based on how their test results are. And hopefully that aligns with what they're learning on the grade level too, so that they're growing together, like, you know, what they're learning in the classroom as well as how they're testing. So it's been pretty remarkable, and the administration's done a great job of really hammering that home this year. Yeah, so as a parent, I see it for sure. I see what they're doing on a theoretical concept level, but as a parent, I'm actually seeing this in practice and in play now. So that's a good reassuring.
Especially in public point, is really people are of data. It's scary. So don't told where people can begin to understand data is not going to be about it. It's really going to be good, and it's here to help us all focus on what we should be focused on. It's very challenging. You know, again, I came from a public school when it had been done, not by me, by other people. I got food there. And we're like. That was.
You're welcome. I'm in a unique perspective. Yeah, as a parent, that was my parent hat. Now I'm gonna put my school board hat back on.
So I did have a question, on the office of superintendent. Have you picked out your new furniture yet? Well, you got a line item for it.
You're not gonna use it? Yeah, is there any money in there?
Yeah, like 3,500, I think I saw.
So why, it's a demo question, why do we need it?
I gotta backtrack now.
He's saying maybe. we should've said that.
But yeah. Okay.
I gotta find it.
Is it 28?
It was just one of those things that jumped out at me. Furniture,
Oh. But just,
28, page 28.
Yeah.
Right in the middle, $3,200.
possible that
32.
the correct one, we put $1 on the line. The reason you do that is that legally, we can't transfer money on the line that start with 0. But if there's $1 on a line, then we can use it. So if we did have a broken debt or something, and there's $1 on it, we could transfer. I have no idea what that reason. It's not for me, I can tell you that. It could be for somebody in the family.
Okay.
Well, if there are no other questions, are there any other questions?
Just got this tonight, so it's gonna-
I can come back. There was a time when we planned 2 visits. And give me the budget funds. And then come back again to enter. Something for it's more credit. It's more small than the budget. So the way the process is going to happen, you get your presentation, you go to talk to yourself. Find approval and find adopting all of these budget for that. And voter, but at that point, not only in any board. Bring up more budget. Visit or ask, and at the public hearing, and we will all be there. You answer either in the town side, school side, questions from the general public. Or from board. But I don't want you to think of this, you're gonna have that repeatedly again to. The public hearing, and actually, I was gonna talk about that tonight, about public setting the date. The most date would be for January 15th. So it would be potentially have another, for 30 days, a month or longer, to digest the information. Though, even if you quick presentation, you don't do the difference. Unless you have decompress for actually look at these numbers and highlight, chat, or make note of the line item, sort of the area that you have questions that they stick out. That way we can kind of find people in there. I just don't want you to think that by definitely or that you're committed to it. The final budget will go forward with the final budget committee recommendation. We need anything that we can.
Do we vote on anything tonight with this
You can.
or not?
Vote on. And we address anything in service, search, or again, we wait to let this know here, but somebody shows up, makes comments. If you end up having, if you end up looking for it, money and having specific, these those, I'm not hard. I'm not hard. If you email me specific questions, I'll answer them in public. So you won't conduct that business team.
All right, do we need to vote on deferring voting on this until after that, until after the public hearing? Or we just,
No, to be honest with you, Either accept it or. Accept it and present it.
So I'll make a motion to accept the Alton School District proposed budget for 2025-26 as presented.
Second.
I'd like a chance to look at it before I vote on it, so.
Well, are we voting on, we're not actually voting on it,
We could.
we're accepting it. What's the difference between accepting it and voting on it?
It's the same thing,
It's the
but
same thing.
but like Brian was explaining, this isn't the end all. So we can still revisit specifics within this budget later on,
Like
but
all
what,
the groups for the town, like we can still go back and revisit any of those and change them, even though we voted on them already, or most of them in our binder. So we can just accept it and then we can revisit it. It's not, we're not set in stone if we vote on it now.
What's the deadline for the budget to be approved? Is it?
After the public hearing in June.
Okay.
My proposal is, we just have to. They, get. Hard to get everything organized. And we ended up, I believe it was last year, before we held the public hearing for the last day. No. So you're a bad thing. My recommendation. Get file, then. We get that book with recommendations. So if that was the case, and correctly if I'm wrong, your vote that night is the recommended by the budget committee. That vote is the vote. Right, and that's the vote that gets forward. You will say one artist. Very much it say rate appropriate recommended dollar operating budget and then at the bottom it says like 5-0 recommended by the whatever that is, but total is 5. I like to try to get everything so it's great for the back there, but so that's what picture is at. So always been for this is more like a 3-4 mountain.
Kind of like checking the box.
it also gets you to the point where you have something to present at the public hearing.
It's
Mhm.
except basically acknowledging this is the number with at least bring forward. Because you only can change what you want to bring forward to the public hearing point. If that makes sense. So if you
Well-
sit down and you do something against recommendation of the department head and superintendent, then you would do that before the public hearing, because the night of the public hearing, all of them printed out. But the ones have,
Mhm.
but after further discussion with the public, we hear any public comments. And we go back in before you get final vote. So it can be changed.
Okay, well, I believe we have a motion on the floor and with a second, so all in favor of accepting the proposal? Do we have,
I,
any opposed?
This, I didn't have enough time to look at it.
Right, motion carried then to accept it and to review it at home for the public hearing.
Do you think, or welcome any of you think the open meeting, problem with that if you want to talk to me. Interested or very concerned? Whatever. I spend. I love it. So, and it would be fun.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And what's the location on that? For the public, right here, the public hearing?
What, we used to post one meeting and then a backup meeting. So it'd just be all posted, ready to go. Yeah. So we wouldn't have to do it again. Just a suggestion. We're gonna have more meetings before the end of this month, right?
We have one 2 weeks from now.
The board selected.
Well, let's see how far we get
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
agenda tonight before we. Next item is the default budgets.
Can I make a suggestion? Could we have this young lady maybe come in, because she's just been sitting there waiting to do financing? Okay, all right. Well, she's the one that's gonna tell us about the surplus that doesn't exist, but it does.
We'll work on it. She printed up, she typed a memo for you. Did you bring one? Mhm.
By the way, I did notice that the red light is on in that mic. I was gonna say something and make him repeat everything he told us.
It's that at the end and I thought, oh, we're gonna have to make him say it all over again.
I mean, it records off of the room, so he's definitely loud enough to be caught on the recording.
So which of these papers is,
So what do you want, start with, do you want to start with going over the fund balance?
sure, which,
So the fund balance, it says understanding the fund balance on the very top of it. And for the record, this is Laura Parker, our finance manager.
Speak to.
So it basically doesn't exist. I mean, we were told for years that there was money in the bank. Well, we had a surplus, a ton of the surplus. And once it reached a certain point, we could take money out and reduce the tax rate. I know, well, from the nineties and zeros, that's,
So that's why I gave you this little printout that I created for you, just to give you a little blurb of what it actually is.
so how can the selectmen take money and apply it? Fund balance, that's what it's always, right?
Yep.
Surplus funds and apply it to reduce the tax rate.
Because what you're doing is you're asking for that you need less, basically, that's what you're doing.
Where does that money come from? So if the town budget is 10 million, we'll say,
Yeah,
and the selectmen put a warrant article on or whatever that says, okay, we're gonna put 500,000 towards the 10 million, so we only need to raise 9.5 million. Where does that 500,000 come from? It doesn't exist, right?
it's like equity.
it's like a what?
It's like equity.
And it
So-
built, oh, I'm sorry.
So
That's
when you go to set your tax rate, you're looking at what is your need? What was approved last year in March at your,
Yeah.
your booth, okay? And then I'm gonna tell you, what do I think you're gonna bring in for revenue? It's all estimated at that point.
Right.
So if you don't spend all of your budget that you've approved and you brought in more revenue, you're gonna end up with equity to borrow from.
So where does that money go to? If there's
So you haven't collected,
300,000 left at the end of this year, let's say there's 300,000 left over.
yeah, in your budget. So you didn't spend 300,000.
Right, so there's say 400,000 left over and the selectmen on December 30th say, okay, we're gonna, what's the word I want?
Appropriate?
Encumber the funds.
Yep.
And they're gonna encumber 100,000,
Yep.
so that leaves 200,000. Where does that 200,000 go?
So you didn't collect it, doesn't go anywhere. So those are your expenditures. So you're saying you're going to spend the allotted money that you wanted and you didn't. That's what you're saying. You didn't
Yeah.
spend it. You encumbered some. So that encumbrance will go into your fund balances marked. It's like earmarked. So you haven't collected everything. So when I put out a tax warrant, well, the tax collector puts out a tax warrant because you've signed the taxes for, say, $14 million. You're not collecting $14 million because not everybody's paying their bill. Correct? On time and
I don't know.
no, they're not. Do you know what I mean? Okay.
So, okay,
So
right.
it is,
So
it is very
so it
confusing.
doesn't really exist. It's just,
It's not a cash account with that money in.
it's sort of like
no.
the Fed. It's fake money. Right? It's sort of like our dollar bills are just fake.
It's like equity. When you borrow from your home, you borrow from equity in your home. What is your home worth? Right? But you don't really have that
But How
money
can the selectmen take that money and reduce the tax?
because it's over the years of inception from the town. They've been budgeting and they haven't been spending it all. Sometimes they've gone over, sometimes they haven't. So if you haven't spent everything you've raised, so you're telling me I need to raise $10 million.
Yeah.
But I didn't spend $10 million. But eventually I'm gonna collect that $10 million because that's what I've taxed everybody on. But I'm not gonna collect it this year, over years.
All right, so.
It's just
there's
equity
still-
that you're building and you're borrowing from yourself. You're borrowing from the equity. So you're basically saying you don't need to borrow to spend that money.
Am I thick or what?
No,
I mean, I
it's
kind of understand, but I
complicated.
don't.
Really is complicated, and I think the person who made the best use of this concept was Elon Musk when he bought Twitter X. And it was, he did a thing based on a valuation of his Tesla and SpaceX, and it was an equity that not really cash in his hand, but he managed to pull off paying whatever it was, some astronomical number for that.
54.
And as a question, when you, let's say we had to raise 14, you said not everybody pays their property taxes. Do you know the percentage of people who,
I don't.
is
know.
it high? Is it a high percentage?
No.
It's a very low percentage. And then you got an issue of like when people aren't paying their taxes, when you do tax liens, you have to do it for 3 years. So you're talking about 6 tax bills for
Oh,
one
okay.
property
Oh, so it's-
before the
yeah.
town can actually tax deed. And then we have an issue of all they have to do is pay 1 year and it pushes the tax deed off
I see,
every
yeah.
year. So you do have people or residents, not a lot. The number is very small.
Okay.
I can't give you an exact percentage, but I mean, the tax deeds that we see, I think we saw 4 or 5 properties this year for tax deed. And they're usually the same properties and a lot of them have title issues. Because they're either raw land or something that was inherited and people don't end up paying the taxes because they don't have a clean title to it. But most of the time that when you have people that are struggling, especially during high inflation times, things like that, a lot of times they're behind on their taxes, but they're not actually gonna let their house go to tax deed.
Okay.
So they're behind 2 or 3 years, but the next year that it comes up, when they're on sort of, for lack of a better term, the chopping block for a tax deed,
Yeah.
they'll pay that,
They'll pay
that year's interest
Just to
and
avoid
debt.
all- yeah.
And then it keeps postponing it a year. And that's kind of what she's saying, like, I guess when I looked at what she put together for you guys tonight, I read through this too, because I was trying to, I remember I was fumbling around trying to provide you with the best explanation I could as to what this was. And really the only thing that kind of resonates with me is a lot of you come from the private sector, work in the private sector. They equate that, and this is language that's coming from DRA, is they equate that to working capital. That working capital is what you use to keep everything running and it keeps rolling over. That's really what this is. And like she said, surplus builds up from the inception of the town. So this isn't from last year, 10 years or whatnot. This is from the time that the town was incorporated in, I think, 1896. And basically over time, the value of the town keeps growing. And because there's overlap from one budget season to another, because you're not collecting all the taxes, you're not collecting everything,
Yeah. it's-
but eventually it catches up.
Yeah.
So if you're underspending, and there's another good thing is there's different ways to budget. And one of the ways that Laura does it, from the financing standpoint for predicting, and she's told me this today in the office too, which I thought was a great point, is because you're required to put in an estimated revenue to the DRA, that comes from us. We estimate based on what previous one. She always underestimates. And that puts us in a better position because we're always trying to play for the worst case scenario instead of the end. If you have somebody in that role that is not conservative in that manner, you could end up inflating your projected income. And that's really going to hurt you in the other end, because you're going to start losing that equity instead of gaining it. So that's another reason. It's not really that we're always constantly underspending, but that we're also estimating our revenues conservatively. It's not like we're throwing out false numbers or anything. It's just we're always going down to the conservative side so that we always feel like we have a safety net there.
And just so you know, so when they set the tax rate, it's on what you voted on last March, but it's this year's revenues. It's what I'm telling you, when they want them, I'm only 9 months into the year. So I've got to kind of say, what am I going to get in the next 3 months? So I kind of divvy it up, and that's what he means by conservative. So I'm not gonna, say, oh, I'm gonna collect this $1 million and don't, and that would definitely hurt your number in the long run. But it's really, it is collecting the money, but it's basically what do I think I'm going to spend? And what have I actually in the revenue, and what is the difference is what I'm in equity at the end of the year. Sorry,
So I think Ryan said that.
but it's not cash, so you get that part.
Yeah, it's not good.
There's no bank
You
account.
can't
out
write
there.
a check.
And see, that's what I was on the budget, all the years I was on the budget committee, it was like, yeah, that's our surplus.
I've come across treasurers that go, where's the money in the bank account? And I'm
And
like.
it's like, okay, well,
I like the analogy of the house and the equity that you have in the house.
like, but-
And you
that's
can, you
what
can
have
borrow
when
against
you're-
that
you're
equity.
Against your equity. Have that.
So if the selectmen are gonna offset, and just hypothetically, if the selectmen decide we're gonna offset the bottom line budget by $500,000 again, I'll just use that.
Yep.
It's not really money, it's just.
It's just
a
I'm
number.
telling them that I'm not gonna need that. When normally I'd say I need,
Okay.
10 million, I'm not gonna need
I
that
think
10
I
million.
understand it, but brainwashed for years.
I told you,
It is
the
very
first,
hard.
I didn't discover this after 23 years with the police department. I didn't discover it till I sat with Laura and a banker from TD Bank talking about municipal. And I'm like, so we were talking about investments. I'm like, so where's that money? Where's that 4 point? And he's like, that doesn't exist. And I was baffled by it.
So how much does the town have liquid in cash? If somebody came in and said, I need a check from the town for $400,000.
So normally we have, oh my God.
One account.
I mean, just-
Well, you want to go rob the bank?
It's over 9 million.
No,
Yeah, so sometimes we can have up to like 9 million if it's in a, but but
that's-
you gotta remember, I pay the school,
Operating.
I pay the school every 2 weeks. Like $558,000 every 2 weeks.
and they return to you at the end of the.
We
year.
collect their taxes,
Well, they return to you you keep them, right?
right?
So if
So
their
we have to
budget
pay
is 50
them.
million and they spend 49, then you keep $1 million.
It goes into your fund.
Yeah, it goes into the fund.
Right, it's one of
There is
those
cash.
things.
There is cash somewhere.
Yes. We
So
have
there is
several
cash,
accounts.
because
We
we
have several
also-
operating.
Like the county money, and what is that? That's like,
It's almost 3.
that I have to write a check to. So I mean.
County's putting that
we
out to
do-
us.
It's not just our general.
So, and this is my last question, I won't ask anymore. So at the end of the budget, the fiscal year, which is what, March 31st? March
We
31st?
do calendar year, so it's
Yeah.
Oh,
31.
okay.
The school is different than.
So at the end of the calendar, year, when you pay everything out.
Yeah.
How much cash do you have left on? I mean, is there cash left that you can put your fingers on?
Yes.
There is, because
Okay.
you just send out tax bills again. So the money is, it's in and out all the time. It's only in December we do these big, the school is year round. I write a check every 2 weeks to them all year long. But the county check for like 3 million is in December.
We're gonna try another analogy. In my business, construction, we bid on a project, we think we're gonna make this much profit. So we don't have that profit yet. but we think we're gonna make it. And what we do is we do a very conservative approach as well. We start right off the bat with saying, I'm gonna recognize that I'm gonna earn 50% of what my anticipated profit is. And as the project proceeds and you get further along, 70, 80% complete, 90% complete, we start to creep that up. But again, it's not money that's in our hands, but when our bonding company comes and looks at us, they look at those numbers and say, okay, yeah, we think you're gonna be all right. So, but we'll bond you.
But you will get that cash.
Eventually, yes,
Whereas
as
Right.
we do eventually as well. So
Yeah.
it
and
just lags.
Like she said, that's the way it works with our cash accounts that you physically have and that we're physically balancing and the treasurers looking after those accounts. They have big numbers in them too. But we write big numbers out, but we replenish those accounts every time a tax bill goes out. So we write a warrant and the tax bill goes out for well, I don't even know what the last one was. I can't remember, but I think it was like, wasn't it like 12 million or something?
Yeah, it was like, well,
Yeah, so I mean, you take all that in, or, you know, a good 96% of it, by the due date, our town is very, is very good in paying their tax bills compared to some other poorer towns or less fortunate towns.
but as we're
Um,
taking that in, I'm writing.
She's writing
It's
checks,
all
but
the
so it's a moving target, but we're always in the black. We're always good. And that's basically what the fund balance is saying, is that the money we take in far outweighs what we are expending. And really, that's what this whole budgeting process is not that we're gonna raise an account with $10 million, but this is what we're projecting it's gonna cost for us to operate the town all year long. Because the taxes are based on the assessment of the town. And that's what sets the tax rate. So,
And that's why I gave you that second paper, is how it's done, how your tax rate is actually set. So last year we ran into a situation where somebody's like, you know, they look at the estimated tax impact and they're like, well, I already pay, what was it, like 13, and now you're gonna add 14, you know, more cent, whatever. You start at 0 every year.
yeah.
Like, you're not adding all of these already onto the number you have. You have to start at the base and go up from there.
So when you look at the warrant article, what she's talking about is there was a misconception with, we put the estimated tax impact at the end of a warrant. Well, for the operating budget, I think for last year, were we like $4.03? The estimated tax impact was $4.03. So people were calling up and they were upset because they thought that $4.03 went on top of the already 13.18 tax rate. Or actually the 13.18 wasn't there yet. Oh, no, it was last year, 13.18, and then they saw the warrant coming out in March. And they thought that $4.03 was gonna be added on top of that.
And then all
So
the others.
when we put the tax impact, like she said, on the next year, you start back at 0 and you build that all the way back up again. So nothing gets added to the previous tax rate. It basically gets wiped clean and then you start again. And everything that you raise and appropriate compiles your town municipal tax rate.
Is
And
there
then you
a
add
law that
state-
requires you to present it in that manner? Are there some sort of requirements, or I guess where I'm going with this is instead, if you said the school, you know, instead of the school budget has a tax impact of X, you said this year's school tax impact is going up 0.5 cent,
Mhm.
you know, or whatever it equates to.
Yeah.
I don't
so-
know if this.
So we don't really know if it's going up 0.5% compared to last year because it's a total calculation. And we don't have any choice over what the county level is, what state education is. And then local education fluctuates with ours, because to be honest with you, Tim and I had a conversation. And Tim was the one that reached out to me because they didn't go to default last year. We did. So this was orchestrated, this 1.85 or 1.89% increase. That's like unheard of at the school level with things. He
Yeah.
did that purposely. Not that he was gonna inflate his budget, but he cut it to the bare bones because he knew that we took the brunt of any increase last year. The town did.
Yeah.
And when we went to default, a lot of it fell onto the town. And in order to help us in an attempt to get things passed, they tried to do their part because we're all in this together. It's all compiled in one. So the way the format that we're doing this on the warrant was actually done through a vote of the people. Somebody put a warrant article together that mandates that every warrant article that we put down, we have to put an individual tax impact for that warrant.
Alright.
So that was a long and round,
Yes, it was.
long way around to answer your question, but yes.
But to get the tax rate, you said you start at 0, and what different pieces do you add together to get that,
So
Tax
that would
rate.
be all your warrants. So your operating budget,
your operate?
all your separate warrant articles, all of that, when they're approved, will collaborate together and end up with your tax.
So on the ballot where it says this will affect your taxes by 0.02 or 1 point whatever cents, you add up all those and that ends up being your tax rate.
That ends up being your,
Estimated.
but your municipal one. What you see on the warrant is only the town side of things.
Right.
So ours usually will add up roughly, we've been averaging lately around. Actually, I have it broke down in my book, I think. We average $4.30 on the town side of things.
Then you have to add the county and the school and the state.
Yes.
And that's not with the revenue. So these are just your expenditures. So then you have to take your revenue that I'm gonna tell them and that offsets some of that as well. So it's not gonna be like to the T, that's why they say estimated. Like if it's, like he said, $2 and something, it's not gonna be $2 at the end.
But yeah, so when you get done adding, because your town operating budget's gonna be your big component. That's probably gonna be $4 or $3.80
Mhm.
alone for your operating. The next big one is gonna be road reconstruction. Road reconstruction's usually about 1.4 million. So that's gonna be another $1.50 or $1.50. All of CIP, I am gonna give you a CIP breakdown, where you have it in front of you, but all of CIP is about $1.90. And all of CIP is all the capital reserves that we put money in every year. So all of that adds up and that's how you get your local number. School, what he presented to you tonight,
Mhm.
will be theirs all alone. That's the second component. Then you have state education and county. And county's gonna be the other. I know where county is. I just got a memo from the county budget that is being proposed at the next public hearing is 11.9% increase in the county budget. But I did see in the memo, they are going to use fund balance to pay that down as well. Because they knew they had a big increase, mainly because of union contracts. There's really not much that they can do. So on Tuesday night, I am going to present that to the entire Board of Selectmen. But I do, in the read file, I have that memo from the board. But I will have that on Tuesday. And once the public hearing happens, I'll know for sure. I can bring that back to the budget committee. Again, their increase last year, that increase hurt us overall, not just county, but state did the same thing. State went up. So every single level last year, the reason we ended up at 13.18 with our tax rate isn't that the town went up that high. The town went up a small percentage. But what happened is that percentage was doubled and then tripled from the county and the state level. So the county went up almost 53 cents. The state went up, or state education went up almost 50, or excuse me, everything was right around 50%. So we, all in 1 year, because inflation, because everything had gone up so much and
And the only thing that the voters can vote on
is the town.
locally is the town
Right.
and the school.
Right.
Yeah, so
So
the town gets the brunt of it.
we usually do, and that's just the way it is, you know, so we have to be conscious of that. And like I said, I've worked with Tim since the day he got here. I was still the police chief, but we met right out of the gate because we were dealing with a lot of school shootings. So, not here, nationwide. So, we had early on meetings about the emergency operations plans from the school and through the police department. But I've worked with him for a lot of years and he's a real professional and he knows this inside and out. And like I said, he reached out ahead of time because we knew that, you know, they were fortunate last year with their budget being passed and going through. But we felt the town on the local side of things felt the pain of, you know, ended up at default in a lot of different areas because of the tax rate. So, but hopefully this year we're on a much better track.
Yeah, it looks it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? for Laura? No? Thank you.
You're welcome. You good with me or do you want me to stay?
Just stay for defaults,
Okay.
just, the other stuff's not even, we're not even gonna go over tonight. So if you don't mind, can you pull, you have two default budgets in front of you. What we're gonna go over with the default, start at the top, you'll have one that says Water Department 2025. It's one page.
Mhm. Yep.
And what you're gonna see with the default budget is the default budget is calculated by being last year's approved operating budget plus any contractual obligations or agreements or matters of law
Mhm.
that require you to pay something. I wanted you to stay with the water department because if you'll notice, there is absolutely no change from what was approved last year. It's carried over. There's no additions, no contractual agreements. No need to raise any more money than what was approved as last year's operating budget.
Great.
We need to vote on that, or is that just what it is?
No, we do need to, vote on it in case, you know, somebody has different idea or comments or a question or something they want to go on. But we do need to, there has to be a recommendation from the, board as well.
Okay.
So but that's self-maintaining, right?
Yeah.
I know I wrote down somewhere, you said that the water department is its own,
Yes, they're funded by the end users.
so they're
Right.
like they're funding themselves. It's not like we're
Yeah. So the way I.
having money or having to pay for this, like they're paying for themselves.
The warrant article, the way it reads for the water department, there is a draft that we'll go over in a minute, but just so you know that we changed the language to make it as clear as possible. It says to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $541,430 for the operation and maintenance of the water department distribution system for the ensuing year. Said sum is to be offset by the user fees. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $538,474. Yep, and it says, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments, requirements by previous action of the town or by law. And then I put on there that this actually is the wrong copy. I added on there that there is the estimated tax impact is 0. And it said that this, I actually put the wording in there with the advice of legal to say that this article will not impact the tax rate. It is funded as from the end users, because there was a lot of question at deliberative session last year about the warrant article. And it being, why are we raising and appropriating tax dollars when only a portion of the town in the village is serviced by the water?
Right.
So we're trying to make it as clear as possible that
So is there another version of this somewhere?
I want to say that
But
I think Stacy might have printed a different.
In your folder,
I didn't steal yours, did I? I may have, I'm like that.
Does it stand out tonight?
Yeah, it was on the table.
No, I don't have this,
this one?
warrant article.
Yeah, it's the one.
Yeah.
Maybe
Do
there's
you
an
not-
extra copy in
Mr.
one
Fogel,
of those.
we can get you
there.
Oh, you didn't get one? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's one.
I thought we were on water.
Oh,
We are on the water default. I'm sorry. I just went to the water. I'm sorry. I was just trying
yeah, I
to
was gonna,
sort of make a point to
sorry.
her comment about the fact that the water department we're trying to make it as clear as possible to the taxpayers that the only people that are bearing that cost in the end is, but is the end users, the water users. But unfortunately, because the town runs the water department, the law requires us to raise and appropriate the operating expenses every year. But again, when Laura was going to talking on how we build the tax rate and how we do things, she estimates revenues to offset expenses. So what happens is it gets washed out because we may raise and appropriate the operating budget.
No pun
But-
intended.
Yes, but it washes out because she's estimating what the
exact
revenue is from all those water paying customers.
Actually, I take the exact what they request and I add that to my, so it does, it's an even, but you have to raise and appropriate for the board to be allowed to spend.
So what we're voting on is the 541, 430, correct?
No,
Nope.
that was already voted on the last time we met. That's the operating budget. So you're just voting on the default,
Oh,
which is the 538, 474.
So I'll make a motion to approve the default budget for the water department for the budget year 2025 for $538,474.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any? uh, Negative?
Post.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. So if you want to go over to the default budget, the other one, this is the general fund, this is the operations budget. So what you're looking at is, this is a breakdown of last year's budget. So this is what was last year approved. And as we go through the pages, these lines on the far right corner show you the only areas that are changing because of law or state statute or town action. And they're very few. So if you go through the budget, the first one that changes is on the back of page 1. If you see the election and registration budget, as you know, that went down almost 50%, even in the default, because by law, we have to fund elections. But we have half as many, we only have one election next year. And this year, we were budgeted for 4. So, all those numbers went down. So for this year's default, those numbers are all reduced.
So through the default budget, there is an increase of $207,264. And it's all related to required either by state or federal laws or town.
Yes. And what we've done is we've notated it on those lines for the details. So that you can see where we go through, like the next one is benefits. So you see federal income tax, obviously that's a federal law, we have to pay that. Medicare, health and dental. And then New Hampshire retirement, both group 2, group 1, we're required to put that in.
Question,
Mm-hmm.
health and dental is required by law in a default budget? It has to
No,
go up?
well, it's required by our agreements.
Yeah, but we don't have unions, right? Yeah.
No, we're not union,
So why
but
does
what they're
that-
talking about is because if we don't agree, if we don't pay it, we lose our contract with our healthcare provider. And by federal law, after the Obama Act, we're required to provide our employees with that health insurance coverage. So what I'm saying is we're under contract with them. If we don't raise the money that has to pay for them, then we lose our healthcare provider.
Do you get one of those 1095 form at the end of the year from your employer that shows that the Affordable Care Act was provided to you and you have to say whether you had coverage or not? That's kind of what that is. We have to provide affordable care.
Yeah, but we don't have a default budget at work.
Sorry. But do you get one of those forms?
But
Do you have
they
medical?
should provide you with one of the
Yeah,
forms.
if we don't make money, we go out of business, right?
Mhm.
So.
Right,
Yeah.
but I'm
Dreaded
saying
profit
that
cycle.
for the Affordable Care Act, you have to provide something and we have to show that we provided.
So you're forced. In a default budget, you're forced to.
Well, the thing is
No,
this
I-
way too.
yeah, I
You've
just
got
wanted to know,
if
that's
you've got agreed to pay for their health care, and then all of a sudden you say, wow, the town doesn't wanna cover the increased healthcare costs, so we're going to cut everybody's healthcare coverage by 50%. I mean, you're gonna lose all your employees.
But we're talking default budget,
I understand that.
and I'm not talking.
No, I understand what you're saying, but he's also understanding,
I just wanna-
we don't, what I'm saying is there isn't
That's
a,
fine.
there isn't a backup. Because
Okay.
it took us almost 2 years to change health providers for an entire town. If we lost our funding in March, we would lose our healthcare right then and there, and there's no telling how long it would take us to find a new provider.
Well, how many
That's really the
employees
issue.
does the town have? Do you know offhand?
93, I believe.
90.
is-
Full time?
Oh, that's not full, that's full and part-time,
Right.
Include the
93.
police, town hall if it here, and then the school?
No, we don't do the school. School's on their own budget that you
Okay,
just
yeah,
saw.
yeah.
So
You
we're,
and the
you're
fire
talking fire department, police department, highways got
Highway, yeah.
got a large number. I think they have the most employees, DPW.
Yeah.
Police department,
Third.
and then you got town hall as a whole.
So what, 90, 93?
93,
Yeah,
and
the
that,
town-
but that
the town-
includes the entire,
Yeah.
all the departments and some part-time.
Okay.
So the part-time, obviously, a lot of, permanent part-time or, they're entitled to prorated benefits, but they're not offered the full-time package.
So it says federal law for the health
Mhm.
dental.
Under the Obama Act, we
Affordable
have to
Care
have,
Act, yeah.
by federal law, we have
Right.
to have
But if
health
it's
and
all,
dental.
but what does New Hampshire state law say about default budget? Is health and dental included in New Hampshire state law for default budgets?
I believe,
I'm not-
I believe it says, no, I believe,
It's one, because
Yeah.
that's,
I think Fed prompts the
Well, it does, yeah. I think I know what he's saying, because like New Hampshire retirement is in there, it's listed, like
Right.
workman's comp, you have to
Right,
provide
because-
those things.
yeah, because that's.
So I think it
state
falls
law.
under that. It's like you have to provide workman's comp, unemployment, like you have to provide those. There's no option. Like you can't just say, I'm not doing, it's under the.
Elections
I don't
have
think-
consequences.
I don't think we ever used to vote on default budget.
You know what, I'm just kind of rethinking that. I think it's always been presented, but you're right, the recommendation, because I'm looking at these recommendations on the operating budget. Default doesn't have a recommendation, it's only the operating budget does.
It's just.
But it's the budget committee's responsibility to present the
Right.
default budget.
Yeah, so,
This is your budget. We just do it for
we'll
you.
present to the
This is
select.
Select board. So technically, this is your budget. As your finance person, I just do it for you. But you ultimately have that.
so, and the rest of them, like retirement system, you're correct, Greg, that's our state RSA, because that's a New Hampshire retirement, it's not a nationwide retirement system, but the state mandates that we're what they call contributing employers. We don't have an option not to contribute.
Right, there's an RSA number there, but there's no RSA number.
Because that's a state one.
I understand.
Yeah.
I guess my question was,
Yeah.
is it in the New Hampshire RSA under default budget? Is it listed? Health and dental?
I don't believe it specifies health and dental. I believe it
Well,
just
health,
specifies insurance.
So that's listed, okay.
So that's the 4013 is the default budget RSA.
Right.
That's what that RSA is.
Right, but what? I guess I'm gonna have to look up what does the RSA 4013 say? What items are in, I just don't know, because it's been a while since.
I believe I have that on my desk. I can get that for you after. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
Easy.
Sorry, I'm just.
No.
No,
Gonna
absolutely.
catch up after these years.
So is the total default budget, 9,729,12, the last page?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the only other section is your insurance.
Yeah, the only other section that is increased is again by RSA. 4013 is liability or unemployment compensation, workers' comp. Liability insurance. Again, it's just insurances.
Other questions?
So do we need a motion or not? How did we do this? We are voting to move this forward to the selectmen to
Yeah.
advance it. All right, so I'll make the motion to advance this default budget for the general fund for the year 2025, total of $9,729,012.
Is there a second? Well, I'll second it. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
And this will be included in your public hearing too. Obviously, anything that's gonna be monetarily, put onto the warrant or whatnot will be included in the public hearing for any discussion.
Yeah, it says the case may be by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law and reduced by one-time expenditures contained in the operating budget and by salaries and benefits of positions that have been eliminated in the proposed budget for default budget.
So the benefits, that's the capital right there.
Yeah, as
Usually
it's
that's what-
contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased as the case may be by debt service contracts, et cetera. So, yeah. It's very vague, but.
What is this sheet?
Oh, I'm gonna, yes, so that is to go with the capital improvement stuff. What this is remember we talked, last meeting, you guys wanted, the amounts of all the capital reserves? That's what this is. This is that breakdown. So, these next two items on the agenda, I will cover them very quickly because all they were intended to be was for you guys to take and review and digest as, because I'll tell you that the warrant article, well, going into CIP first. CIP plan is just a guideline. It's a committee that puts together a recommendation. It has now gone to the planning board. They recommended it to move it forward. It is then moved forward to the Board of Selectmen. They have seen it and accepted it as presented. But again, all that means and all this is a guide for committees and boards to plan for future expenditures. These are large dollar amounts, equipment, apparatus, building, large building repairs or additions, things of that nature. But a lot of it has to do with equipment, excavators, dump trucks, grounds and maintenance. So if you look through this, again, there's a lot of information to digest. My intention tonight is to give you a general overview and just give it to you. So that you can look at it. You don't need to take any action on this.
Okay.
But if you look at it, if you go back, all the way to the end, and I'll show you, when you look at it all the way to the last page. At the very bottom, you look at it, it says, tax rate impact for town departments and school. And you see that for 25, 26, 27, they're trying to keep it all right around $1. So they're just over $1 at $1.090. I don't know why they're going out to the hundredths, but that doesn't make a lot of sense when you're talking dollars and cents, but just don't mistake that as $1.95 because the zero in there makes a big difference. It's basically $1.09.
Mhm.
And then $1, and then they bring it out. The highest year is in 2028 at $1.10. But you can go through and it'll tell you for each capital reserve what the capital improvements committee has reviewed and is recommending for a contribution. When you see these different lines, the second line down on any of these says total deposit, total deposit. And then it has it down in each year, it tells you what they're recommending. So for 2025, for the fire department capital reserve, they're recommending $300,000. Um. And so what I will tell you, along with this document, this recommendation from the independent committee. The draft warrant articles that are being given to you tonight as well. These are drafts. The reason I say they're drafts is they gotta go through legal and they have to go through DRA for exact wording. But I will tell you that the recommended amounts right now are the amounts that have been approved by the Board of Selectmen and also the Budget Committee up to this point. Again, after the public hearing, that can change. But all of the numbers in the other capital reserves all coincide with the numbers that the Capital Improvements Committee recommended to the Board of Selectmen. So the selectmen and department heads did not deviate from capital improvements plan recommendations. But again, I know how the board feels about getting an abundance of information in a night and being asked to vote on it after a 10-minute presentation. There's a lot of information to digest. So I wanted to get it to you tonight so that you folks could have some time with it, look at it. And then when it comes time to review the final language, you will have already seen the bulk of all of this. There might be some slight changes on wording or language, but it won't change the intent of any warrant article. And I will have the exact tax impact written on there. Right now, there's a blank next to tax impact. Those will all be edited on there after legal goes through. Same thing, there are no accurate votes. All the votes, I think, read 0-0 on this document. Or there are no votes recorded. Because we haven't, those won't be recorded until till after the public hearing and after warrant articles have been officially.
So we
voted on.
won't vote on the warrant articles until until it's not in draft form and
Correct.
until we know the estimated tax impact.
Right, you will get a final draft with all, you'll get a final copy that does not say draft on it, that has the final approved language from legal. But the nuts and bolts of everything that you will see is in this draft form. And like I said, I just wanted to give you something to digest ahead of time.
Yeah, we didn't have this ahead of time last.
No, they
year,
did,
yeah.
no.
And we didn't have the estimated tax impact last year. So this is good.
Yep.
And that goes along with your capital reserve, so you can see what's currently in there as of October 31st.
Yep. So no,
For each one of those.
yeah. So the very last column, it's total after 24 appropriations. That tells you basically what the balance is. Yes, sir.
So I guess this is for the selectmen. I don't like the way, this is my personal. You guys lumped all these things into one. It's almost $250,000 between capital reserve fund appropriation and the nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think they should be split out like they used to be. So you can vote on each one.
I will tell you, just to add that information, and I know that, I don't believe, Drew, were you already on, you weren't on when they voted on that last year to consolidate. And I will tell you the big reason for it.
Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, I think it's amazing.
Well, the big reason for it was the general public was very upset about the fact that it took them 2 hours to get through a warrant. Because without lumping them together, we were up to 58 warrant articles.
I mean, it shouldn't. You should go prepared
Yeah,
to know what you're doing.
unfortunately, that they
I mean, that's just my opinion. I don't agree with
I
it.
agree with you.
And I'm gonna vote against them because I don't like the way that. It doesn't give me the chance because of some of these.
So you're gonna vote
Then I
against
don't-
the entire warrant article?
You want an a la carte?
I do, yeah.
I think
That's my personal-
the
Well, the
non-
only things that they lumped together was $20,000 and less.
to me, the nonprofits should not be lumped together either. And I know that makes a very long ballot, but voters should do their due diligence.
Exactly. That's how I feel. That's my opinion. Would like, we vote once a year for the town. You should be prepared. Doesn't take long to get prepared.
Can I have a question? I don't know if you have the answer for this, but during the town election, people are voting for selectmen and others. How many people actually vote for the warrant articles? I mean, as opposed to candidates? I mean, some people might just leave. They don't even bother reading because there's so much to read and they don't know if they're voting the right way or not. Is there, have you measured that?
The over-unders.
Oh, the over under,
Over,
yeah. People always vote on it, but then you get people that it's just like voting a straight card in a regular primary election.
No.
No.
No, no. Or
But
they
even
go, yes,
sometimes,
yes, yes, yes.
sometimes a
If
no
they're-
is a, you know, depending on how it's worded though, right? Like a referendum question, sometimes the right vote, if you want to vote no, you have to vote yes, because it's just the way it's worded, yeah.
You know, I suppose the way to get this fixed is to go back to traditional town meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that there would ever be any hope.
People that do not show up for your deliberative for the amount.
Yeah, last deliberative, I think we have 44 voters.
And most of those, like half the staff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It was
town
very-
employees.
I think that's why a lot of people don't go, if they say why.
Right.
But they're not, like you said, they're not informed, which is very
Right.
sad.
And if you want to get informed,
You gotta go to those.
that's a very
Make
helpful
a
place
difference. You
to
can cut it
go.
right then and there at the, you know what I mean? You can zero out one, you know, that's what deliberative is
I
for.
mean, there could be a petition warrant article to go back to traditional town meeting too. Which,
Those take forever though, the town meetings.
Yeah.
You're there until 4 a.m, so I mean, it
oh,
could be.
I mean, really, the justification behind it last year and the way that they felt is that $20,000 and under, these were established capital reserves that have reoccurring balances in them for many, many years now. And it's a small sum that is requested every year to maintain these capital reserves. To stay 20, there was a specific vote to stay 20,000 or less. Because the board felt anything over $20,000, yes, they felt strongly as a group at that time that warranted verbiage of its own and sort of basically drawing it out for the voter to see. Well, combining it was a way for them to get away from 5-page warrants. That's really all it came down to. Same thing with the nonprofits. No nonprofit that has not been established and long maintained by the town can be included in this list. Anything that comes new, a new creation, a new request, has to go to an individual warrant article first for it to be, again, drawn out for the voters, you know, for the voters to see it, read it, and understand that it's not one of our normal or regular nonprofits. So these all nonprofits we've been contributing to for many, many years. And they have always passed. That's the other thing that the board at the time, again, I'm putting this out for your benefit of the discussion, and also Drew wasn't present last year when they discussed this, but a lot of thought went into not just, hey, we're tired of this thing being so long and we just want to shorten it up. But the other thing is they researched how they were always approved, but the landslide of votes that they were approved by every year. The for and against, it was mainly 75% or more every time that voted for these nonprofits or voted for the CRFs that were under 20,000.
It
wasn't-
wasn't changed with this presentation. I mean, I'd be interested just with the consensus of this committee to, you know, I understand you two have voiced an opinion and, you know, what are your thoughts on separate versus lumping together?
Yeah, I can see going separate. I mean, I don't mind. It's 7 more bubbles to fill in.
7.
Build them in completely.
Now I understand why the selectmen did that. When I saw it on the ballot last time, I was like, what the heck are they doing? Like, why would they lump together? But if it's historically been approved, you know, I can see why they chose to do that. I wouldn't mind voting for each one
Individually.
individually.
What are your thoughts?
Individually.
Interesting. Okay.
But
Take that back to your people.
You bet I will.
In my opinion, and $2.07, I can get an iced coffee at Cubby's.
Small one.
No, a lot of that.
Oh, good deal.
Mhm.
All right.
That's all, just like.
All right, well, I just, that's all I gave them to you just for discussion for tonight anyway,
Yeah.
so. Anything you wanna, I'm happy to answer any other questions or any discussions, but really, CIP and the warrant articles are just for your review, digesting. We're glad we had the conversation tonight. Before seeing them in final form, because now it's gonna be a discussion that the board has and whether or not they're going to opt to return.
It's gonna be the same 400 people who show up to vote in March anyway, or however many pathetic number of people, 600.
Actually, we've been up,
More than
we've been in excess of 800 at our town meeting, our town votes.
They're like,
But compared to the
15%?
population.
Yeah, I know.
I get what your
What
point
is
is. Yeah, 40 at delivered.
I get the information.
So are there minutes that we need to approve?
No, we do not have any minutes back from her yet on that. But we'll check on that, follow up on that.
And is there any other business to conduct?
Only business is, I just want to get, we did talk about the public hearing for the 15th, but as Greg had pointed out, we should really set a snow date at the same time. So
Is the 15th the last legal day we can do it?
no, the 21st is.
Okay.
So I did it the Wednesday before, so we didn't get jammed up. So the 21st is the last day, which is the following Tuesday.
days
Monday's a holiday.
Day.
Yeah.
would be the 16th, maybe, the day after. There's no way we could have snow for 2 days straight, right?
Yeah, you don't have a heck.
Yeah.
No,
the night-
I'm waiting for him, you went to as well, like he said, that's why he didn't wait till the last day.
I think making the 16th the snow day, I think makes a lot of sense.
And do we have a meeting set prior to the 15th of January? Do we have another meeting scheduled? I know
So,
about.
Yeah, so-
Next Wednesday, or are we?
yeah, so next Wednesday, I don't have anything, so I don't meet with the Board of Selectmen again until Tuesday. And we have a meeting scheduled on Wednesday, so I don't have anything else for you besides what we've discussed. The only thing we're waiting on is warrant articles won't be complete till January. The board will have them, but they gotta go through legal, they gotta go into DRA. And we don't wait. So the last day for petition warrant articles is January 14th. So that's why I wanted the hearing date too, to the 15th, because the taxpayers can submit a petition warrant. We already have one. But they can submit a petition warrant article up to that period. We have to accept it if it comes in correct form. So the only thing I have left for you guys that you have not seen yet or in final form is your warrant articles. The budgets, we've been through every budget. We've been through the school, we've been through the default. Now it's a matter of really homework at your own pace, at your own time. As much or as little as you want to do, questions that you may want to ask, but there's really not a real need to force a meeting in before the holidays, but it's your call. I'm happy to have one. I will tell you that there's really no point in meeting next Wednesday because I will not have anything for you. So, but if you want to have another one mid-December, we can. Everybody's like, no.
Christmas party.
Yeah, we could have a Christmas party. Want to do a potluck or something?
So will the warrant articles be ready by the 8th?
You won't get them till public hearing, right?
Well, we won't get them to public
Because
hearing.
it's the day before is the petition.
The petition warrant articles is the day before, but I can get them,
Yeah, but we could have,
I can get them absent the petition articles.
Right.
I can
But
get
they
them.
don't want to vote on anything till after. the
Yeah,
hearing.
but you won't want to vote on it until
Right.
after the hearing, so.
We can get you like
Yeah.
fees, like, so you can just pick
But I
up
don't
a
think-
fee of the tax
we
impact.
don't vote on petition warrant articles, I don't believe.
The petition.
Not on
one, just with
petition.
These.
Right.
These ones, right,
So as long as we have the selectmen's.
right. Yep.
Well, how was a petition warrant article proposed? How was that done?
So you need
5.
25 registered voters have to sign. Basically, we have a form that you can take. You put it, the body of what you want. A lot of times people will come to us so we can help them word it. Cause it has to be a legal warrant
Legal, yeah,
article.
okay. Yeah.
So we'll help them. Like I'll tell you, the one that I have for this year, Ruth Arsenal put one together for a welcome to Alton sign again with a lower dollar amount. Cause originally it got changed from $10,000 to 20,000
Yeah.
at the last deliberative.
Mhm.
She put in another one for 10,000 to try to get a welcome to Alton sign in the traffic circle. I originally for last year, we did that, Stacy and I helped her word that article. And then she put it together and then took it out and, 50 or so people registered voters. So once we get that in, and we have to make sure that, one of the problems that some people have is they don't instruct people to make sure they write legibly. Because if they can't read it, so the supervisors of the checklist are required to verify that they are registered voters.
Mhm.
So if they're not a registered voter, their signature, or they can't make it out, it won't count.
Okay.
So you have to have 25 registered voters, certified registered voters by the supervisors.
Hmm.
Are you thinking of one?
What's
Are
that?
you thinking of one?
No, well, not offhand.
I'm just kidding you.
I thought of a sign that said, welcome to Alton, now go home.
No.
Oh, you couldn't. have a
Bring your
petition
money
warrant
or go
article
home.
with That at the bottom. So will the selectmen be done with their warrant articles by January 8th, 7th?
Yeah, so see, this is the problem I had with them is their next scheduled meeting after Tuesday night fell on December 24th.
And we
So-
won't be there.
Yeah, so they, so we bumped it to the 23rd, the Monday night. But so they're gonna meet and they're gonna approve everything or hopefully approve or change or whatever on December 23rd. So it doesn't leave a lot of time for you guys in that interim to meet, other than I can get you, I can have them electronically sent
Yeah.
out to all of you.
I think that will suffice. I do.
If you want, as soon as the board finalizes them, because I'll have final language at that point, minus petition warrant articles. I'll throw on there the one that we do have already, so you have it, and anything we get before then, I'll throw on there. Even though we don't need to vote on those.
But we don't need to vote on them before the 15th. We just
Mm.
need to read them.
Yeah,
see them.
it's just for your, because like I said, I know that you guys don't like, well, it's already been voiced several times. I don't really want to get a packet of information and then turn around and vote on it in 10 minutes. And I know the Board of Selectmen has asked me the same thing. I've been trying to be as diligent about that this year. To make sure that, documents and backup is given to you ahead of time. And that's really all I want you to do is have the warrant articles. So on the 15th or whatever day that we do meet at that point in time, that you're not seeing it for the first time.
Right.
So,
Kind of like Thanksgiving dinner, you spend 5-6 hours preparing it and 15 minutes eating.
yeah.
So should we schedule a meeting like a week before the public hearing? Just, we don't have to have it, but should we schedule one just in case we want to get together as a board and say, hey, what's going,
That's actually a good idea.
That's not a bad
If you
idea.
have questions.
then if you
can
haven't,
Have your
you-
answers answered. By or myself, whoever. And then when the public is to ask, you do have your answers to be well informed.
I mean, I don't know if January 8th is a Wednesday night, if that works for. I don't want to leave this. for you guys to decide.
Yeah.
I actually won't be around,
Yeah.
so,
All right. So when will you be around?
I think I fly back in very, very late or very early in the 10th.
Will you have a can?
I will have a tan.
I don't know if that was authorized. Is
That's TMI.
that authorized by the big boss?
Yes, my wife.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was referring to. So,
Well, when do you get?
So I'm gone basically that whole week. But I could do the 13th if you wanted to do just a couple days ahead and Monday night, 13th.
It's fine with me if it works for you guys.
well, I guess if we're just scheduling it sort of as a backup. in case we want to
Right,
go over anything.
Plop
Yeah.
it in there in case we,
Yeah, it's good to have it on the calendar because it fills up quickly.
and it's there, we don't have to use it.
Think
We could have.
Is the room available?
meeting.
You got-
Available if necessary.
School board
I
meeting?
think we have a school board meeting, trying to check. Yeah, the 13th from 5:30 to 7:30. School board.
Do you have a backup selectman?
Yeah.
He's gonna,
Who's my backup?
I can't remember off the top of my
I
head.
can't either.
I want to say, was Dick your backup? Cause he did it last year.
No, I think he was my backup on another one.
See your backup to a backup?
He's. Foil backup.
Does it make sense to have a backup at a warrant article?
I mean,
meeting?
at the 11th hour,
Yeah,
I mean, other than it's a select board member who will be familiar with this
okay, yeah, that's true.
already.
Same information.
We can always see if somebody else can attend if need be. It's not a problem. I mean, the only other option is to hold it the week of New Year's Day or the week of Christmas Day, and I don't think either, any of you are real anxious to make that happen, so.
Guess we need to get it back.
Well, I can do the 8th, or no, I can't do the 8th. Did I say I could do the
You said you could do the 13th,
13th? Yeah, I can't do the 8th.
but they have a school board meeting on the 13th, so that means we wouldn't have a school rep at all. But-
The eighth, and then if you don't need it, like he said, if you don't really have that many questions or concerns, then you have a date, but you don't need it. But if you need it on the eighth, then he'll find a backup for Drew.
I mean, and we have to make sure that we're ready for the public hearing. That we have all the information we need, the things are gonna be printed out, all that stuff,
Mhm.
because I know one year didn't happen. It was ugly.
That wasn't me, Greg.
I know it wasn't you, but I was on the budget committee meeting, it was ugly. So,
I don't even remember the public hearing last year.
That's because nobody showed up.
Not
Oh.
one person. from-
I don't know if you remember, we sat there with I had to use a tape recorder, or we had a table recorder. Because they were having problems with the recording, because we we're in the hiking room.
Now I remember. Okay.
And we sat there and the whole entire time, we kept talking. It wasn't a recorder, it was that desk, mic, the round little disc that Josh had set up. And I remember we had to keep, the chairman kept, it was Guy Maloney, but he kept, every once in a while, he would, because it was only sound, he would speak up and say, letting anybody who's listening to the meeting know that we're still here. The public hearing is open. We're keeping it open for another 15 minutes, even though there are no public members present. So we kept basically, sports announcing what was happening, just so everybody knew, because nobody did show up,
we
so.
could give out free hot dogs or something.
Yeah.
Hot dogs.
Yeah, I don't think. You know, most people, I guess nowadays, they don't, the ones that do have questions or concerns, they don't necessarily show up at the public hearings. They usually organize to try to change something on the floor. And really, to be honest with you, the less and less amount of voters we get, they're usually grouped in people that are either like-minded or have already spoke ahead of time. Because you can see it when they get up to make a motion or change something, they usually have the majority of the crowd in their support. So I think that's kind of why we're seeing less and less people, because the people who do want to make those changes would rather see, when you speak at a public hearing, it's still up to the board to take that information and do as you see fit. But if somebody's really adamant about making a change or doing something, they can do it with action on the floor, despite whatever the board thinks at that point. So.
Okay, well then let's schedule a meeting for the 8th, if everybody's agreeable. I don't think we
Yeah,
need a
that's fine.
motion for that.
Nope. So next meeting,
At 6.
Yep. so January.
And next week is, canceled.
Yes. And I do appreciate that too. Not only will I not really have anything for you, but I found out that it's my kid's Christmas concert too. And the funny thing about it is Carol mentioned that last week. Remember when the last meeting, she said, I can't be there, but Christie will be there because my grandchildren have a Christmas concert
Mhm.
Yeah,
next
I
week.
told her I wasn't gonna be at
Yeah.
this meeting either, cause yeah,
Yeah.
my seventh graders in it. So,
So, oh, is that the ACS one too? So
yeah.
my kids go to Kingswood.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the ACS Christmas concert last night because my grandson was in that one.
Ah,
And Kingswood is next Wednesday, because my other kids are go to Kingswood, so.
If there's no further business, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Yeah, well, Fred mentioned hot dogs a few minutes ago, and now my stomach's rumbling.
We had hot dogs the other night, so it's, we don't,
Turn off your
we don't,
microphone.
we don't have